You cannot just ask them. That's the key of the challenge. The rules are without asking or telling them.
Sounds hard, but all right.
So the encryption of the card is just not strong enough. Like the data is not protected enough.
With a Manuel. Hi.
Hey.
Ah.
What's up?
Wait, didn't you say you will be at university?
Well, the lecture ended early.
Functionals are everywhere, most of the time we're unaware, but horses know we're leaking all the time. When looking in the fridge, when Calvin does the bidding bridge, use Sarginals for fun and for the prize, cause Sarginals are with us all the time.
So, don't you think it's a little bit worrying that you just need a few minutes of access to extract the key from a card?
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds really dangerous, actually.
But it's actually getting a bit cold. I would like to go inside, I guess.
Let's get inside.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the building's closed.
The building is closed.
Yeah. It's the weekend.
So?
Don't you have an access card?
Well, I used to have an access card way back, but I destroyed it because it's so insecure.
You destroyed it?
Yeah.
Well, if you think it's so insecure, maybe Lucas and I could help you.
That sounds like a good idea, yeah.
How would you do that?
Maybe let's go to our institute and brainstorm about how to build a secure card.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Let's go.
Are we allowed to be in here on the weekends?
Sure. I mean, it's a student's lab. We can go here whenever we want to.
So we have this card and we want to make it really, really secure.
Yeah.
What did Stefan Mangert say about mitigations again?
Well, he said that...
Right, so you want to be sure that you avoid that there is any variation in terms of timing or that you see any difference in particular patterns that occur on a computer.
So let's look at AES. We have constant time, constant code, but we have these table lookups into the S boxes here.
That doesn't really make any sense. Table lookups are not constant time.
But the control flow is constant, right?
But that's not constant time. We established that in season 2.
But what if we just remove the table access?
You want to remove the table access?
Yeah.
Then it doesn't work anymore. The table access is important for AES.
Yeah, sure. But listen, I've read about this bit slicing approach.
Yeah.
And you can express various computations, all the linear operations, and even the table lookups. So all operations in AES with a constant sequence of Boolean operations.
And that is 100% secure against DPA?
No. Bit slicing, first and foremost, helps to design cryptographic implementations that are constant time and have a constant control flow. We still have the problem that the concrete data that is used in a computation, like a cryptographic key, for example, will influence the power consumption of a device.
And to address this issue, you usually have two options. So usually the way this works is you have a device that is processing some data, and this data then influences the power consumption.
Right. And you can either break the first link, we call this masking, or the second link, and we call that hiding.
Wait. Noise-canceling headphones.
What?
Noise-canceling headphones. You know how they work?
Huh?
You have a signal, the sound from the environment. They have microphones and produce the exact opposite signal on the earphones, and that works to cancel out the noise.
Yes, that's what we can do for the card as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just have two circuits, and one of them is the exact inverse of the other.
Yeah.
So the power consumption differences, they just cancel out.
Exactly.
Well, yes. I mean, this is commonly referred to as dual rail logic. But it's not perfect. For example, if you produce physical hardware chips, they usually come with some variations due to the manufacturing process. And this could mean that you have small variations still in the power consumption depending on process data.
And that means if you record many traces, you will still be able to recover a small signal.
Yes. Besides that, you could also have problems with attackers that perform localized power measurements, for example.
But had you somehow prevent the averaging?
To average, you need perfectly aligned traces.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what if the attacker cannot align the traces?
Wait, so you're trying to tell the attacker what they are allowed to do?
No, of course not. That's not possible. But this alignment.
Yeah.
What if there is no correct alignment anymore?
Oh.
But what's with this thing in between then?
You have to fill it up with dummy operations.
But isn't that difficult? Imagine if you have many traces, like 100 or anything. They all have average delays in there, or even you shuffle around the order of operations if that is possible. But this randomization for all of these shuffling things, what is this based on? Where does the randomness come from?
I don't know, but let's just assume it's secure randomness, right?
Mm-hmm. And that secure randomness is independent of the secret, right?
Sure, yeah.
Then you're screwed.
What?
The noise. If it's secure random, then it's statistically independent and you can average it out.
Damn.
Yeah. So you're just reducing the signal to noise ratio with this.
Yeah, this is called hiding.
Yeah, that's kind of disappointing.
Which is why we also have masking.
So, and this is why the song is so successful. The video plays a role. And the mask, it's brilliant.
The mask, yes, it's brilliant, Manuel. Think about it. Think about a simple algorithm. You have here the algorithm in the middle. You have some input, you have some output. Let's say this is AES. You have some key.
Yes.
And now, instead of running AES on this secret input, you add a mask to it.
Yeah, but that won't work, because how does the receiver know how to decrypt the message then?
Oh, very easy. I send the mask with it, and the receiver can decrypt the ciphertext and XOR the mask onto it again.
Well, but then you have just encrypted a different plaintext.
Sorry, but this is complete nonsense.
Oh, that means that we just encrypt a different plaintext, but it can be attacked the same way.
Yes, but I really like the mask idea. Now, think about it. What if you use the random mask to split up the data that you process? You would now have two seemingly random plaintexts, and you just duplicate the entire algorithm.
Oh.
And at the end of the computation, you just XOR them together again, the two parts.
The two parts, or the two shares?
Yeah, they are actually called shares.
Ah.
So you run the algorithm twice.
Yeah.
Once for each share. And then afterwards, you can combine the results with XOR again.
Yeah.
But the real question is this secure?
Well, I'm wondering, are you running them after each other or in parallel?
Does it matter?
Well, if it is completely in parallel, two completely parallel circuits, this would have to be the same operation at the same time. That sounds dangerous.
Kind of. Such an approach can actually make attacks already a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
But we do not dive into this much detail in this episode.
Yeah, I think we should take a shortcut.
So if we want to secure an algorithm or a device, we have to think about how can it be attacked. We have to think like attackers. And that means we have to think about, can we leak some intermediate value here?
Mm-hmm.
I think I cannot compute a prediction vector anymore with this, because both of the intermediate values that I have here on both sides, they are not related to my plaintext or my secret key byte anymore.
That's good and fine as long as the attacker cannot leak both shares and just put them together.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe we should ask Barbara and Robert tomorrow and check with them what they think about that.
Yeah, let's do that. So we duplicate each operation, and each operation runs on the two shares now.
And if that works, we will become famous because we defeat differential power analysis attacks.
Well, no.
But it really...
No, you just reinvented masking.
And it's actually also not that simple. Just look up these operations here. For shift rows, sure, that's linear. Mixed columns, basically the same. But what about add round key?
Yeah, that's also linear. You just XOR the round key, right?
So you have intermediate 1 here and intermediate 2 here, and then you XOR them together.
Yes.
Do you notice something? Because you XOR the round key to both intermediates.
So they cancel out.
Exactly, because it's not simply a linear operation, but an affine operation.
Wait a second, but could you just add it to only one of the two sides?
Yeah, and what if the attacker attacks exactly that?
Well...
But maybe we can split up the key as well into two shares.
That sounds good, yeah?
Yeah, you can do that. And however, that leaves you with one last step unsolved. And this is the subbytes operation. So the S-box table lookup.
But we just said that we can use the bit slicing approach there. So it's basically just a long sequence of XOR operations, right?
And logically AND operations. So the S-box is a nonlinear function, and you need nonlinear Boolean functions to implement this. For example, the AND operation.
But for XORs, I think it should be trivial, right? Because in AS, you have usually some XOR of intermediate value A with intermediate value B. And now you have the two shares, and that means you XOR share 1 of intermediate value A with share 1 of intermediate value B, and share 2 of intermediate value A with share 2 of intermediate value B.
Sure, they are linear, but...
The AND gates.
What about the AND gates? Can't you just do the same?
The ANDs are not that trivial because an AND gate will combine all the input shares of one intermediate value into one value.
Why is that a problem?
Because you can attack exactly this position in the computation where all of the shares of an intermediate value are combined in this one operation.
The basic idea is that you have 4 inputs and 2 outputs, and some complex construction in the middle which makes sure that it doesn't leak.
Okay.
So this could look something like this here. What we see here illustrated is a Trihina AND gate. But this is a masked version of a Boolean AND operation that instead operates on shares of inputs and produces shares of outputs. And another example of a masked AND gate would be the DOM AND gate. It looks somewhat similar. It does the same thing, but the structure is somewhat different.
But the important difference to an unmasked AND gate is that it also takes a random number.
In the middle there. But what does the random number do there? I want to compute a logical AND, not a random number.
Well, the assumption with masking is that the distribution of the shares of the computations over many encryptions should basically be independent of the unmasked values. So in order to preserve this independence, we need additional randomness in the nonlinear masked computations.
But if you use a normal non-masked AND gate, you will get some bias into that distribution, and then it's not independent of the unmasked value anymore. And then you can just attack one of the shares.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah, then you can basically just act as if the masking doesn't exist at all.
We were also wondering, what if the attacker can leak both of the shares?
Well, in principle, you can mount the same DPA attack that you already know, but this time you will first have to pre-process the traces.
Yeah, because your prediction vector doesn't take the shares into account.
Yeah.
And scanning with the prediction vector over the trace wouldn't find anything useful then, right?
So I need the same operation at the same point in my trace, which I don't have, right?
But which you can generate. The trace contains maybe 100 samples.
Mm-hmm.
And first, you just normalize the trace by subtracting the mean in every point.
And then you generate a new trace from that, a much longer trace.
Okay.
Where you basically combine each sample with any other sample.
So I start with 0 and combine it with 1, 2, 3, and so on until 99, depending on how long the trace actually is. And then again, 1 with 2, 3, 4, and so on.
How many is that then?
Should be n choose 2.
N choose 2. So for 100, this would be...
Should be 4,950.
It's a lot more effort to break that, like 50 times more.
Yeah, but that's also not the main problem. I mean, in the end, masking is just another way to make it harder for the attacker to break your implementation, because the attacker will need to make more measurements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and here the highest correlation you will find is only about 1/3 of what it was originally without masking.
And that means you need a lot of traces, a lot more traces, but 2 shares could still be broken.
Yeah, and what if I just create more shares then?
Well, you can go down this route, but you also need to consider that masking adds a certain amount of overhead to your implementation.
Okay.
Overhead as in, is it slower?
Well, it could be slower, but it will always surely also have a higher power consumption or use more area and hardware. And on a very resource-constrained device, you might not be able to do that.
Ah, like an RFID tag or card.
Exactly.
3 shares should be fine, right?
I can also attack 3 shares, but first you need more measurements, a lot more measurements, and then the trick from the 2 shares, so you need that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically have to generate an even longer trace that contains combined samples. And so for the case of 3 shares, you would have a complexity of n choose 3.
Okay.
A lot higher. And besides that, you have the problem that whenever you combine samples, yours brings down your signal-to-noise ratio even further.
Mm.
So 4 shares then?
N shares, 5, 6, 7 shares.
Yeah, we call this higher order masking. In practice, you may find first order masking, so 2 shares, to about 5th order masking, so 6 shares, highly depending on the concrete use case of your implementation, of course.
But I mean, we can break all of that.
You can break all of that, but it will be more expensive.
Okay. Like more traces?
Yeah, as we said, more traces, more time, but also more skilled attackers. And that all costs actual money.
But why does money play a role in side-channel security?
Well, that's a basic principle. If the thing you protect is less valuable than the cost of an attack, you will not mount the attack.
Ah, because you could just legitimately buy access to that thing.
For instance.
Ah.
So one classic scenario that we could consider here is pay TV.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you do not want to pay for a subscription for your video stream, you could consider attacking some receiver, extracting a cryptographic key, and just using that instead.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, such an attack comes with a cost, so it might not be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, maybe you could even use this key and sell it to other people, with malicious intent. Then it might actually again pay off.
But that would be illegal.
But this is a trade-off that you need to consider when you build such devices or services.
Okay, so let's see whether this masked implementation on this card really works. It works. And that should be really, really secure now. Nice.
But this is still all hypothetical, right?
Of course, this would be completely hypothetical, but in principle, you could do that. And it illustrates the threat model and the mindset and how you could actually make things more secure. Here, Manuel. This card should be secure enough for you.
Thanks. I also have something for you. Something side-channel related, but you'll have to wait a few more weeks.
Claudia, I just got a call that there is some suspicious activity on your student card. What have you done?